All right, then. Welcome back to the Gopherwood Lounge. I am ArcPress Senior Editor Dave DJ Butler. Come on in out of the rain. We're going to get into an interesting conversation here momentarily. But before we do that, let me remind you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit the notification bell, go to arc.press and sign up for our mailing list. Come over to X and follow us at arc_press. And whatever other things you can do to develop our nascent support us in our nascent developing rebellion, that would be great. Today, here with Dan, who is the Dad Lit podcast, and excited to have you on the show, Dan. How you doing?
Pretty good, Dave. Just grateful to be on the Gopherwood Lounge. I've been watching from the sidelines jealously, waiting for waiting to come on. With all the you've had all my cool friends on, like Ben Gibson
Oh yeah.
and of course just excited about Art Press and excited about the things that you guys are doing, the book with Larry, and just all the cool stuff going on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We're excited too. It is kind of the golden ticket, the Gopherwood Lounge. It feels like
It
next stop
does.
fame. Feels
It's
inevitable.
yes, yeah. It's the same with the Dadlit pod. Yeah,
Yeah.
be a part of history of
Yeah.
Dadlit history when you
Yeah,
when you come
that's
on the pod.
that seems right to me. Now you've got an icon, which is a handsome bearded fellow. Is that you? Are you also the model, or is that more of an
That was
abstract figure?
that was me when I had hair.
Okay,
So usually I'm not on video, so I could get away with my little icon. But the you can see there's a guy who I think clearly passes for a dad,
sure.
reading his book, and that's the moniker of the Dad Lit Pod. I was hoping to get T-shirts done at some point, and maybe even Dad Lit koozies,
Yeah,
or the what do you call them, fanny packs. I
fanny
think
pack.
eventually the goal is to have a fanny pack.
That feels like a dad accessory.
It is a very dad accessory.
Yeah, it feels like a mug would be pretty low-hanging fruit too. I don't, maybe it's too obvious.
Yes, yeah, a mug would be pretty good too.
Yeah,
I feel like I need to have a fun saying though if I do a mug. Like I have
yeah,
the Dad Lit logo on one side,
yeah.
and then on the other side something like to the effect of conspicuously reading Dad Lit,
Nice.
or hitting upon
Yeah.
one of the many literary zeitgeisty things that are kicking around these
Yeah.
days.
What about something like dads, not just for bods?
It's- that's perfect. We could do that. We could
Yeah.
definitely do this. I was going to create a sticker that people could put on their, or like a case that people could put on their Kindle that says this machine uh, uh, reads Dadlet.
Nice.
Yes.
A sticker to go on the guitar, sort of
Yeah,
a
a sticker to
honor
go
to
on a
Woody
guitar.
Guthrie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or you
Uh,
can put it on the back of your laptop if you're writing, and
yeah.
this machine produces Dadlet.
Yeah. I think that's fantastic. I love it. Um, well, what an interesting, what a provocative title for your podcast. Um, I'd love to hear, I guess, first of all, what you mean. Like, what is Dadlit?
Well, Dadlit, I've approached it very generally initially, because I wanted Dadlit to be inclusive,
Okay.
rather than exclusive, because I wanted Dadlit to be about dads exploring books that they might not necessarily know existed, right?
Okay.
So to that extent, in the very generalist terms, Dad Lit is books by, for, or about dads.
Okay.
And that has a wide range of possibilities. But I've found that books that are by dads or for dads or about dads tend to have uh, some unifying qualities. The unifying qualities tend to be that they are made to appeal to or to explore the experience of fatherhood, just from a general case. And in some cases, it can be about the, dad lit, that is the absence of fatherhood, right?
Hmm.
So, for example, I like to use two examples for the breadth of dad lit. The first is Old Yeller, which I think is a
Hmm.
dad lit masterpiece, which is effectively about a son in a non-traditional friendship who learns to become the patriarch of his family in the absence of his father,
Hmm.
with the ultimate act being having to, um, at the end of Old Yeller, rather tragically, having to sacrifice this sort of representation of a being or a beloved member of his family and friend
Hmm.
who helped him become strong enough to be there at the end of the book.
Yeah.
And I think Old Yeller is a dad-lit masterpiece. And then on the other side, there's a literary work called Fleischman is in Trouble, by Taffy Broder Ackner, who's a woman actually. And that book is about a father in New York City going through a divorce, and it's told from his perspective with like the uncertainty of what the other side of the divorce looks like, of what his wife is doing. He's just sort of dealing with the challenges underlying that and what that means to him as a father and as an ex-husband, and sort of talking about uh, what goes into modern fatherhood, and
Hmm.
and how one undertakes that.
Hmm.
And that, of course, is written by a woman and is in on the other side, but tackles contemporary millennial fatherhood in such a way and in such depth and with such humanity that is, in my opinion, another Dadlit masterpiece. And then, of course, right in the middle are guys like Larry Correa, who you guys have at ARC, or Tom Clancy is, I
Hmm.
think, the master of Dadlit. And I use Tom as an example because my Uncle Billy, who is a Air Force veteran, reads nothing but Tom Clancy and the Air Force Times. And I thought, man, it's
Yeah.
if that doesn't represent, dad lit of like he has his favorite kind of socks, he has his favorite kind of truck, and he has his favorite author and his Air Force Times. And that sort of to me captures the just breadth of dad lit, and some of the various different kinds, but ultimately it's something that your dad will love. It's like a book about a friendship with a dog. It's a Jack London. It's Red Badge of Courage. It's just books that really speak to fathers and dads and grown men.
Yeah. It's super interesting. So I think let me propose another sort of dad lit work that I have a lot of fondness for. The Shel Silverstein poem that Johnny Cash recorded as a song, "The Boy Named
Oh
Sue,"
yeah.
right? Starts out, the very first line is, "My daddy left home when I was 3."
Yes.
Right? That's the first line. And I use this song as an example to teach some ideas about writing. Have used it many times. And that first line is so powerful, I think. Um, One of the things to see about it is that it immediately hooks people because everybody either has a father or you have a father-sized hole. Like there's no
Yeah.
alternative, right? You have one of those in your life. And so to start out immediately with this kind of powerful universal, and it's I'm pretty sure it's my daddy. Maybe it's my
Hmm.
dad. Daddy left home, right? And you're like, you're immediately hooked on this question, right? Like why did he leave home? Did he come back? Is this a crisis? Is this an ordinary, right? Left home when I was 3, didn't leave much to ma and me except this old guitar and an empty bottle of booze. It's an absolutely
Hmm.
fantastic first line um, that that sort of grabs you with that universal experience of fatherhood in the first 2 words, and then gets you to a crisis by the end of the line,
Yeah.
right? Um, and um, and of course, the song is all about a sort of a surprising and rowdy way that Sue reconnects with his father, right?
Yes.
I won't
Yes.
spoil it if you haven't listened to the song, but you should if you do not know
Of
this.
course.
A boy named Sue. Um, that's super interesting. I had 2 reactions. One is, you would think, um, especially where well, first of all, let me reverse the order. It sort of feels like someone might argue and say we have kind of 2 different things here. Like one thing is, hey, books about fatherhood, and
Hmm.
another thing is like books that men want to read. But actually, you're specifically saying books that dads want to read, which is not necessarily the same as books that all men want to read, right?
Yeah, there's ultimately there are books that dads want to read versus books that generally all men want to read, I think fundamentally.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm trying to think of like a good example. I think there are a lot of books where where the underlying point of the book, and I think the narrative of the hero's journey is a perfect example, right? So the hero's journey often requires the dad to be dead and non-existent
Yeah.
because, of course, the young person needs to be left alone to
Needs
go
to not have someone else's resources to draw upon, right? Be
yeah,
forced to,
precisely. That's
yeah,
he's growing up. It's an
right.
allegory for growing up. And to that extent, I think there are a lot of books that are like that that don't have dads in them, right?
Yep. Yep.
Like the dad's sort of like a specter
Hmm.
of a dad. And that can be dad lit, but what I think like a lot of dads like are like books that harken back to shared experiences that they've personally had in childhood. I think something like what's what's a I was thinking about it today. Like Hatchet, for example.
I was going to say the Richard Paulson various books that are sort of
Yes, yeah.
touch on kind of camping and wilderness stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's to some extent there's that experience is dad lit because dads look back on that affectionately. Whereas I think in other areas of male literature, it might not be the case that the dad, sees themselves in that character. Probably, I'm trying to think of certain examples, but mostly what my focus has been is on bringing in categories of dad lit, right?
Hmm.
Is talking about what we could bring in because I didn't read fiction for a while, and when I came back to it, I had a really hard time finding books I wanted to read. You know, I had a hard time at it. We obviously had I know he's persona non grata in your office, but the only guy that I was reading was Germ. Uh,
Hmm.
and then he stopped publishing books, so I don't read him anymore because there's nothing to read. But but to that extent, I continued to read Stephen King and I continued to read Germ, And I came back into men's fiction when I decided to start writing my own stuff because I
Mhm.
found out that that things had changed. And I had the hardest time like finding stuff that I was into. I'd buy things, I'd buy prize winners, I'd buy stuff from Minotaur, and I'd be like, man, this just seems really sort of like forced, and it lacks like elements that I really enjoy, like humor and all the stuff that made like Raymond Chandler books really attractive. Like it's not just the plot of the story, it's not just the mystery, but it's also the fun social commentary, it's the speech about blondes, it's the fun like insults that he levels at people. It's that sort of dynamism that I really enjoy. And it all kind of seemed off. And I decided that I wanted to go out and I wanted to find stuff that appealed to me. And so that's part of it. The other part is that I wrote a detective novel with my friend. My friend and I challenged each other at the beginning of COVID to write detective novels because we'd always talked about writing a detective novel and I'd outlined novels in the past.
Mhm.
And so we sat down and we wrote detective novels. And my detective novel was actually loosely based on a character from his detective novel because I liked the idea of the surly police chief having all of his power taken away and then having to go out and solve a case without the accoutrements of his authority.
Mhm.
And so that's what my detective novel was about. And then I I was like kind of impressed with myself, which is I think we when we write a book, we all kind of are. When we get to the end, we're like, wow, I can't believe I did that.
I wrote a book.
I wrote a
It's
book
legitimately an achievement. Yeah.
like it's huge. It's so huge. And then I'm like, how far am I going to take this? And what am I going to do with this? And do I have what it takes to make this happen? And then I found out that old drunken detectives in Florida are considered passé. That Carl Hyacin had effectively nailed that market, and that no one was looking for that, and that sent me on a journey where I was like, okay, I have so many stories in me. I have so many things to say, and I have so many, and I now know that I can do it. That I sat down and I've been writing ever since. And now I've written 4 manuscripts and had now on a second agent, and I just can't stop. I keep going, keep writing, because I find it a worthwhile endeavor. I find that um, that there is a need for original stories, and there is a need for stories that center dad characters and center the experience of fatherhood, but don't use it as the essential element of the plot. Like you, the father is just there to save the kid. You know what I mean? Like these ideas about fathers at different times of their life, and I just instinctually wrote this when I wrote the books that I wrote. And I realized it was dad lit because I did a little literary salon with some friends and I let them read my book Water Hazard, my manuscript, and about the police chief, the surly police chief in Florida, who has to solve a murder. And they said, my friend Nicole said to me, she said, I would never have picked this up in the bookstore, but it's really funny and I really like it. Who are you trying to sell this to? Like, I feel like my dad would like it, but my dad doesn't read books. And that's where Dadlit comes from. It's the sort of realization that dads need an easier way to find books that they'll like and that appeal to them, and um, that one day the perfect for dads table will be at the Barnes and Noble, and dads will no longer get copies of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance every Father's Day over and over and over again.
That's fun. It's interesting. On the one hand, a part of me wants to say, well, this just feels like these are very broad categories, but like actually, um, getting ready to present our first season of books to the sales team in the near
Mhm.
future here, and so for a trad publisher, one of the things that means is getting together a list of comps to say to the sales team, these books are like X, Y, and Z. And so I've been, you spend a lot of time kind of poring over like BookScan and Amazon and stuff. But I've been using AI tools, just like search engines, to give me lists, right?
Yeah.
So, and I will say, I said, this is, I was doing some searches on maybe Thursday last week or something, and I typed in a search that was list 20 uh, young adult thrillers or mystery novels published since 2022.
Mhm.
Every single one was written by a woman.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a disqualifier, but I was looking for sort of boy-oriented kind of stuff. This is for the American Treasure Hunters. I said, huh. So I said, okay, same search, but I said, written by male authors. I got a new list of 20, half of which were still women. Okay. Not even with
Yes.
like especially it's not like they were all named Morgan and Harley, so it was ambiguous what their
Yeah.
sex was, right? It's just that AI lies and it couldn't come up with 20, so it came up with like, you know, 10, um, most of which were self-published,
Yep.
and then threw in a list of 10 women, right? So like actually maybe this is a genre that could use some attention. Maybe this
Yeah.
is a
I bet the
literary idea.
Martian showed up like three times on that list. 'Cause
Yeah, and Richard
it
Paulson
shows
made the
up.
list actually. So
Yeah.
not Hatchet, but his most recent, which I forget what it's called, but it's similarly a young man having a wilderness adventure. I forget what it is. Gets
Mhm.
lost in Alaska or something. So um yeah, so maybe there's a need. So this is interesting. So you got into this like as a writer. You at some point, I mean, I think you just told us a story. You saw Dadlit in the mirror. People were talking to you and you said, "Oh, what I am
This
doing
is
is
Yeah, I'm Dadlet,
I
right?
am Dadlit." Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's super interesting. I think about myself as a writer and that resonates a lot. And I think I'm not going to sit here and like walk through my list of books, but like a lot of them uh have sort of dad elements. Either the characters are I mean, I've got a science fiction series where the main character is in fact a young father and he has two small girls, and that's sort of part of the stories. My Hiram Woolley novels are about a 45-year-old man and his adopted, 16-year-old son, right? I'm actually quite pleased by the fact that the uh, the main relationship subplot in all three of those novels is not romantic. There's almost no romance at all. In the third novel, the son has kind of a romance subplot.
Hmm.
Um, but the widower father does not. It's an urban fantasy, no romance. The main relationship is the father and the son one. But I think you're right. I think that is fairly unusual. But you kind of saw this as a writer. What caused you to say, "Aha, you know what I should do? In addition to writing more books, I should have a podcast about this."
Um, I did that because I was on Twitter and I found a bunch of like-minded people on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And um, So one of my favorite things is actually talking about my writing and
Hmm.
talking about writing. And I actually really feel that like 90% of the fun for me is sharing um, my writing with other people.
Hmm.
Like writing it is 10%, but it's really kind of meaningless to me until somebody else is enjoying it. And I find that like in making all these friends, all these writing friends on Twitter, that a lot of people share that urge. They share that idea that like, yeah, writing it is really fun, but getting to share it and getting to talk about it and having someone to talk about it because I'm sure you know like for a lot of particularly indie authors, just getting read is a challenge.
Sure.
Finding people who are willing to take the time and sit down and read your book is
Sure.
is a big thing. It's a big
Sure.
thing. And I fortunately have a wife that does it for me, and I have a best friend, and we exchange books as we write them and we go through them, and that's something that we do, and that provides me with that option. But not everybody has that, and as male societies become really atomized, I mean, we just no one's becoming a Mason anymore. No one's going to church anymore. No one's joining bowling leagues anymore.
Hmm.
And yet there's this like vibrant community of dudes that are writing and their dads and are living in the burbs and they're committing this enormous amount of time and they don't have any place to like share it and talk about it and engage with it. And so I just decided like that's what I wanted. That's the
Hmm.
space that I wanted. And if I was going to write Dad Lit, then why not just create the audience for myself for my Dad Lit while also engaging and creating this idea of a genre that's not about um, tropes as much as it's about market and who to put the book, who you want, or who the book is going to be good to put the hands in. And so to that extent, like that became like the dream, which is to offer that space and to have those conversations and to just have a place where you can talk about and share your book. And dudes just love talking about their books. I think you know this. You know, not everyone's there, not a lot of Thomas Pynchons out there. Guys love talking about their books and they're really passionate about it. It would be like it's like when a person works on a classic car, right? And then they go to the weekend classic car meetup and grill and have hot dogs and that sort of stuff. And the Dad Lit Pod is kind of like that. And I hope as things progress and as more authors become interested, and as I can find ways to make things tax deductible, that I'll get to go. I had hoped to go down to the Texas Book Fair and meet up
Hmm.
with some Texas Dad Lit authors, but it's just not going to happen, unfortunately. But like, my hope is to like have Dad Lit events to like have the Dad Lit, bocce or horseshoe tournament at BoucherCon, or to do that
Hmm.
at, Dragon Con or all these places where like people that are interested in like cool books by dads, for dads, and about dads can get together and meet each other and create those sort of communities. I think I forget who you were talking to that had that like online military sci-fi community with 120 members, and it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's a great thing. That's a great thing if you're interested in that and you have access to that. That's so awesome. And I think that Dad Lit writers and dadlit readers should have that.
Yeah.
And so that's what the Dadlit Pod's about. And obviously, the one challenge that all dads have is time. You know, like I got time to write, I got time to read one book a week, do one podcast a week, and I wish I had more to,
Yeah.
do like a Facebook group, deal with all those people on Blue Sky.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go near Reddit. But at the very least, I can do this. And it's fun too, man. It's just fun to talk to people who are passionate about things. People who are passionate about things are the best people to talk to because they bring their whole self to what they're endeavoring to do. And when you're like in the publishing space now, where everyone's talking about, you know, they're going to use AI to replace people, and AI is
Oof.
going to
Yeah.
do and AI is going to do all the video, and AI, and there's going to be no art. And it's like, why? Like the community, the Dadlet community looks at that and they're like, why would you even bother to do that? Because the experience itself is part of the fun. The experience itself is part of building something, and earning the respect of other male authors is just essential to what you're doing here. You know what I mean? Like I don't,
Yeah.
you know,
You read a novel written by somebody else, and it's an attempt that person created to bridge the gulf between one consciousness and another, right? And
exactly. Yeah.
and and someone else is reading the same novel, trying to bridge that gulf in consciousness, and we have a shared language because we've read the same book, and that we can communicate in that shared, canon gives us the ability again to try to sort of bridge consciousness and connect with other human beings. AI takes that all away.
Oh
AI,
yeah.
look, here's a machine generated simulacrum of a story, of a piece of art, and hey, the great virtue is it can be highly customized, but the
Yep.
problem is if I have AI tell me a highly customized story, then you didn't create it, but you're not going to read it either, and neither is that person or that person because it was customized because I'm the hero, and like five different women all fall for me in the story, of course, because I'm the hero. And right, AI told me a story. It's
Well, beyond
we're on
that,
a precipice of throwing away a lot of things, and canon is one of the least of them.
yeah, and beyond that, when you write something, you discover something about yourself,
Yeah,
right? Like
100%.
I discovered that when I write books, I tend to have this sort of adventure in my head about fathers and their relationships to their kids and their relationship to society and the sacrifices that they make and how they think about things and all of those are interesting things that I've learned about myself because I wrote the book, right? If you're not writing the book, you don't learn anything. You don't learn anything about yourself. You don't like have that discovery. And I think you also don't learn, right? It's there's a learning element, there's a mastery element, there's like an extension of you. There's a conversation. It's like I don't want to have an AI chatbot girlfriend. I want to have I like having my sentient wife.
It's not the same thing. Exactly
Yes.
right. So this is interesting. So do you, to what extent do you find that the community around the Dad Lit podcast is active? Like in other words, you have people who are watching the
Oh,
podcast and you have someone who comes on, but do you tend to be in touch with those people? Are you on Blue Sky and on X staying in touch
I
with them?
I'm on Twitter or X. Blue Sky is just so dull. I
Mm,
can't spend I just get bored there.
mm,
I'm mostly on Twitter. Twitter tends to be a little more free flowing. I'll post episodes on Blue Sky. I'm also part of
Oh.
um, like sci-fi fiction groups and horror fiction
Mhm.
groups and thriller groups on Facebook. So when I have an interesting episode with an author, I'll post it on there. Aside from that, you can find the podcast on YouTube and Spotify and Apple because people are very particular about where they prefer to get their
Which
podcasts.
platform they use? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing about it is I have a waiting list a mile long of
Wow.
people who want to come on the pod and who want someone to read their book and who want to talk about their book. And they don't ask how many people I reach. That's just like not interesting to them.
Mm.
What's more interesting is to like get the chance to have a human conversation with someone who is interested in their book. And of course, there are like so many people approach writing from so many different and interesting ways, and they approach reading and what they like to read from so many interesting and different ways. And to me, it's really you get to like know people, and we have fun. We have Dadlit lore. My inability to pronounce the word emu initially. I have uh, a listener, Jamie Bryden from Australia, who wrote the Dadlit Pod intro music. and and he asked me to write the preface to his book Letters from the Emu War, which is sort of like a found document comedy book about when the Australian government tried to kill emus. Unsuccessfully, by the way, they lost that war. And so I, as a historian, got to write a fun preface about that. And I've got people who have done backboards for Twitter, other design elements, and then I do interviews, and then we have a book club. And the book club, if you get your book done on the book club, you're
Mm.
expected to do the next book club
Mm.
with me, and we read books. And I think me and Michael Robert Liska are going to be doing Kent Wascom's Great State of West Florida.
Mm.
Kent's an interesting guy. He's a professor at Old Dominion in creative writing, and he writes about what he calls West Florida, which is basically the Florida Panhandle to
Mhm.
New Orleans. And he's had some interesting books on that.
So fun. So do you are you building up a canon? Like, is there a list of the books that you have reviewed and read and talked about and done in your book club? Like, is there like these are the dad lit books?
I mean, I do. I I have occasionally audio essays on Dadlit and male literature.
Hmm.
Um, I talk quite frequently about some authors are just nothing but dadlit. I mean, anything that Tom Clancy does is dadlit. What's his name? Jack Carr writes dadlit. Raymond Chandler writes dadlit. All of these guys that do the military thrillers are all dad-led authors. Jack London, any book that features a man and his dog in a heroic situation or a heroic animal is always
Mm.
going to be dad-led. And so, to that extent, I think the hope is, well, I'm trying to focus on contemporary works, right? Because that's the area it everybody can find a copy of Dune and all the copies of Dune
Sure.
if they want it.
Sure.
And what I'd like to do is I'd like to discover contemporary living tablet authors and to magnify the signal around them and
Yeah.
to do that. And I have a lot of indie authors on. I
Hmm.
don't discriminate on that issue. I think
Hmm.
everybody,
Sure.
it's like if you're on the Dadlit pod, it's your hour. Whether you're indie or trad pubbed or you like
Hmm.
doing short stories or you like writing novels, it's we're talking about your work and about the stuff you like and the books you like. And met some very interesting people, ranchers, a lot of veterans write Dadlit.
Hmm.
A lot of people from Texas. Texas is Dadlit Central, man. Everybody's writing Dadlit in Texas. Arkansas. I just interviewed someone who lives in the Czech Republic. I've had dads who live in Japan, Australia, and so really just so many guys writing books that want to talk about them and their dads, and it figures into what they're doing and what they're all about. So yeah, just like with me.
Yeah. Interesting. Have you had reactions from women? Have you had any women comment on your
I,
quest here?
I had the fictional influencer on,
Uh-huh.
uh, Kirsten. I can't remember her name right now. I had her on because she has such great videos about marketing for indie authors,
Yeah.
and she's done a lot of videos concerning uh, how to code your covers, right? To make them appealing to certain people and what the
Mm.
coding on the cover says. And so she was so interesting and so insightful that I had her on. I'd love to get women who write Dadlit on. I think there are, like Taffy Broder Ackner, for example, from Fleischman is
Hmm.
in Trouble. I would love to talk to her about that book and about her insights into fatherhood and and so to that extent, definitely have that. My wife thinks it's terrific because she's
Hmm.
like, "Oh, it's nice you're making friends." And and I always point out that she loves romantasy.
Hmm.
And she did not read fiction literature for the longest time because she was like me. We read a lot of nonfiction. We've always been readers because of the professional nature of it. But as soon as I started reading, she started reading, and she got very into the romantasy genre, and she really enjoys it. And she wants to make it clear that she likes that she prefers the smut in the Dragon series over the smut in the Sarah J. Maas books. She likes the characters in the Sarah J. Maas books. I made this mistake once, pointing out that she just loves Sarah J. Maas's smut, and she was like, "No, I like the characters. The smut is much better in the other books." So, but that's fun for her, and she's enjoying reading and having, a dad and a mom for my 4-year-old who is constantly watching us with a book, makes her want to read, right? She wants to read. She's interested in reading. And so makes it worth it fundamentally. I mean, a lot of, uh, a lot of my sort of author journey is like being able to say that, you know, I set out to do something, I
Hmm.
made it happen, and I took it as far as I could take it. And so later on, when my daughter asked me, what was that like? And I could be like, it was hard, but doing hard things is worthwhile. And using that to build yourself and to make friends and to learn about something is just like that's what life is all about. That's what everyone should be doing.
That's it. That's very meta. Your dad lit pod quest became a sort of like you're the hero of your own story, and you're able to talk about the moral, the meaning of Dadlit in terms of a sort of a protagonist and a narrative. That's very cool. So this obviously has some real personal dimensions. Do you think that what you are doing around Dadlit and the response you're getting, do you think that reflects anything larger happening in society or in Western culture? Or do you think you're sort of idiosyncratic on your own path, or do you think people is
Man,
there some larger trend you're a part of or pushing against?
I mean, I would say that it's idiosyncratic, but it might be a cultural thing. It might just be because, the free press now has their guy who's encouraging men to read the classics, right?
Hmm.
They just came out with a podcast with a literature professor and businessman who wants to encourage people to read classic books. I think that particularly in like the cheap thrills economy of like porn and video games and infinite choice, uh this like desire to create something for yourself and to um have something kind of like outside of the online plugin where you
Hmm.
can experience it without being bombarded by your cell phone or without being bombarded by, advertisements or somebody else's imagination of what something should look like. I think that people are just really gonna want that. I want that, right? Like a lot of the inspiration to sit and to write is that after like the writers' strike, when we all, got hunkered down, things just kind of got boring from a narrative perspective. And and I wanted something a little different. And that's what I try to do with what I write, right? Is to
Hmm.
make things a little different, to make things interesting, to try uh, and that in and of itself is entertaining. And I think people are gonna start looking for that if they haven't already. I know a lot of people who read classic novels, but they just don't read contemporary stuff. I talked to so many dad-led authors who have reread Dune 4 times, the entire series 4 times, and it's like there's got to be something out there that's like Dune that's being written because of all the Dune fanats in contemporary America. There's got to be something that's like that fun and that interesting. Now it's just about connecting people with it, which is why I like you guys so much, because you set out with that goal in mind. Um, and the other thing is, I read a lot of dad lit, and I am familiar with what is being published by the other publishers, the big five, and there are a lot of things that I read that are really good, but I just don't see the big five putting themselves out on a limb for it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, I just don't see them picking it up. And so that's why I'm excited about what you guys are doing. And about, there's another press called Raconteur, which is an indie
Sure.
press.
Yeah, yeah. North
And
Texas troublemakers.
yeah, and I just like that. I like that. And there's an indie men's, well, it's not really, it's just a literary press called Picket Fire Press that's run
Hmm.
by now a friend of mine named John Duffy that's doing men's literary fiction basically because John's the editor and he gets to publish whatever he wants.
Hmm.
And that's what he wants to read. And I think that there are just so many stories that have gotten like left behind that I'd like to be reading and I'd like to have available. So,
Yeah.
just getting excited that someone's undertaking it and standing up for it. And if the least I can do is interview authors and have some cool conversations and maybe make some friends along the way, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah. It's interesting to me. It sort of has this feel like so like Jordan Peterson and his Maps of Meaning, which is like I mean he's
Yeah.
famous for his 12 rules or whatever, but Maps of Meaning is an earlier and it's a serious sort of Jungian psychology book. And he says look, people read Jung and they imagine that he's talking about some kind of a magical phenomenon where, like, magically in our brains, there are all these shapes. And he says, he undertakes to say, look, the reason we have these shapes is because we have common experiences. And he drives a whole lot of meaning, a lot of map of meaning, a lot of archetypes out of the basic fundamental experience that all humans have of innovation, encountering or encountering something new, right? Encountering the
Mhm.
unknown, and sort of shows how that that thing which we all do again and again and again leaves a kind of a shape in our experience, right? Well, similarly, like we all of us gestated in a womb, right? And we're biologically made to so that we all either we had a male and a female parent who we kind of imprinted on us, right? What a male and a female do, or we didn't, and so we're trying to figure out in the absence of that kind of imprinting, right?
Yeah.
So like a dad is a deeply archetypal thing. So it sort of feels to me like there's this kind of hey, yonder lie the monuments. They are still here. We can still see them. But where are the monument makers of today? And this is an eternal quest that must be sort of taken up. And I am going to do it. I'm going to sort of try and be a guide, be a trailblazer, be a herald, be a an not a publisher, but one who publicizes uh,
Yeah.
for people who are trying to take up this thing that every generation does inevitably, because every person has to do it. Women have dads or dad-shaped holes also, right?
Yes.
Um, so an aspect of this is a dad could have daughters. A daughter should be trying to figure out the meaning of dad. Um,
Well, as you know, I
yeah,
explore that in one of my
yeah,
books. And so
exactly right.
yeah, and so to that extent, and I Peterson's a great example. I don't subscribe to like everything Peterson says, but he talks about particularly modeling, right? On why it's important to roughhouse with your kids. So when a dad roughhouses with their kids, they have superior strength and they teach sort of a sense of control and
Hmm.
fairness
Yep.
and what is appropriate and how one um, what is sort of like violates the contract of roughhousing, what is acceptable within the confines of roughhousing. And you think about that particularly, and I have a girl, so my situation's a little different, but you think about that with young boys and reading, for example. And there are all sorts of stats about the importance of male modeling on young boys in reading. And one of the things that everyone likes talking about and everyone talks about is that boys do not want to sit in the seat at school and that they really struggle with that, right? That there's a kinetic element that that is there. And I think that part of the reason why boys have success because they watch their fathers demonstrate this sort of disciplined mastery of reading, right? It becomes ingrained in sort of the that masculine image that they see, which is that, like in my house, in my father's house, a mastery and an advanced knowledge of history was simply understood as a thing that all men have. All men have a mastery of history. They know that that is simply essential to male existence. And I think in a lot of ways we've done that for boys, but the mastery of fiction we're not doing, right? Because young men get up there and will be able to, talk you through, why a P-51 variant is the way it is when you can see it from the ground. But, having a discussion about, the sort of like literary 19th century changes or Moby Dick and why Moby Dick is important and what about Moby Dick really speaks to us is just not something that we're doing now because we've focused on this other thing. And so that's another area where I think like um dad's reading fiction, dad's talking about fiction, dad's talking about philosophy, uh, Dad's talking about morality, by the way, which is, we've been pigeonholed as the fogies. But I think you and I both know we've watched like young people who seem sort of directionless in their moral understanding of the world. And and that is interesting, albeit sort of tragic at the same time. And you wonder if the conversations had been had back then with the dads within the structure of the book, similar to what I was doing with my dad with history. And he did make me read Siddhartha, which I hated. But you wonder if we're having those conversations building a fully functional human being from that perspective, I think is just that's what we should be aspiring to. I think that's what might be missing from today when we find out kids don't read the whole book. They just read parts of the book. I mean, I don't know how you learn anything from a perspective of morality and value and intuitiveness and empathy from reading a passage from a book versus reading the whole thing, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So that's dadlit. It's a
Yeah.
big chunk of the pie that we're
Yeah.
undertaking.
Super interesting. Well, look, is there anything that what do you think I should have asked you but didn't? What's the thing you thought we'd talk
Oh,
about but I
geez.
haven't raised?
I mean, I'm very interested in marketing
Mm,
and making marketing work, particularly when it comes to I had a conversation with the other Dave or David
mm,
about this, which is that I think in the person who's most likely to pick up the book for dad is gonna be the daughter or the wife, um, and for their birthday. And I think we should just make it clear on the cover, book is great for dads.
mm,
Like if there was a way that we could make that clear, whether it's through an insert or something like that, when a book that's great for dads, and you guys are in the position being a publisher to be able to do that and to experiment with that and to know the metrics when you send these things out. I just think that would go like a long way to putting books that dads like in their hands, because books for boys kind of makes sense. You'd see a cover and oh, the boys are going to like that. Hardy Boys, boys are going to like Hardy Boys. It looks like Hardy Boys. Boom. But I think from the perspective of dads, like I'm just trying to, I hate to hurt the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance guy, but uh,
Robert Pirsig. I think he's dead. I think he can
is
handle
he
it.
dead? Oh no.
I don't know. I'm gonna look it up. That book's old. I was given that book in high school, so that book's like not a
So
new
you
book.
so you know what I'm talking about.
I do know what you're talking about, and it's a good book, and you're not saying it's not a good book, but
No, no, I'm just saying that
like there's got to be more than one option.
there's got to be more than one option. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he died in 2017. 8 years dead. You can say what you like.
Yes. There's got to be more than one option. And there are so many living authors that are dads who are writing about dads who we could be putting that book out there. You know what I mean? And so yeah, man, that would be the big thing that you guys as a publisher, if we could figure out a way to convince the daughters and the wives of the world that on their way to pick up Sarah J. Maas book 15 of the fairy thing, that there's a book for dad there, that he'll like
Yeah,
and that he'll have fun with, you know? And they're out there because I find them, I get them sent to me constantly.
yeah, yeah. I bet you do.
So,
Well, fantastic. Well, Dan, thanks for coming on today. Really
oh,
really
it's an
appreciate
honor to
talking.
be on the lounge.
Yeah. Well, it is a rare honor. It is. I mean, you're in the first couple of dozen here, so it's
I
the
know that.
Hall of Fame. You're a founder. Um, Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Good work. I support you in your quest. Um, for those who want to come find the Dad Lit Pod, what are the platforms you're on? What should they look for?
Oh, you can find me on Spotify. It's just the Dadlet Pod on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you do a podcast, you can find us. YouTube tends to be the least invasive that people
Mm.
like as well.
Don't have to
And
download
it,
an app or whatever.
yeah, yes, you don't have to download an app, and you don't have to like enter in your info and all that other. Dads hate that. And the other way, if you're on X at the Dadlit Pod,
Mhm.
we're always chatting. I'm always posting articles from mostly Real Clear Books and Culture, and we're always chatting about, new Dadlit books, and you can find cool authors there that are always interacting, and it's just a fun conversation, ongoing, trying to build a movement and spread awareness.
Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Well, that's terrific. Thank you, Dan. Thank you to the audience as well for sticking with us. Look forward to seeing you next time. And in the meantime, remember that the humans win in the end.
That we do.